You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely.
Good morning and welcome to Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News for February the 12th. Good morning, Red Cindy. How you doing?
I'm snowed in.
You're snowed.
I'm snowed in. How are you?
I'm all dug out.
That'll come this afternoon for me.
Yeah. Yes. You got what we had the other day by the sounds of it.
Yeah. It's we were thinking it was going to hit yesterday morning, but it waited till later in the afternoon, evening. Started about 7:00 and then went all night and stopped about, I'd say, 20 minutes ago.
Oh, really? Eh?
Yeah. But knock on wood.
School buses canceled.
School. They canceled school yesterday for nothing, and then today is obviously canceled. They can't get the buses out. So
Yeah. Yes, yeah. That's the thing. It's winter. We live in Canada. We got to expect the snow. It has been a few years, but it's returned.
Well, unless you're out in Victoria, like Vancouver Island or Salt Spring or the islands around there, so far the coldest day they've had has been 14 degrees.
Really? 14 degrees?
Ask me about the houses I looked at when I found that out.
Yeah.
14 degrees? Maybe I should have a house out there and sell this one.
Yeah. Might not be a bad spot to look for a future home for sure.
That's right. Retirement homes out there where you get no snow. I'm in.
Yes. Yeah. Good to know that's something like that here in Canada, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
All right. We've got a bunch of news today. We've got 8 stories as usual. So, as I say, we might as well just get at her because I know this first story is a long story. We recently reported about a MP here in Canada that has started a petition about changing the cannabis regulations. So this is where this is going to be started off. It's a long one, but we'll get right at her. All right, here we go.
Right.
The first story of the day comes to us from StratCan. Headline says, Normal Canada says recent cannabis petition lacks evidence. Normal Canada is criticizing a recent petition that proposes to raise the legal age of access to cannabis in Canada to 25, ban the production of cannabis edibles, and to revoke the licenses of cannabis companies due to odor, arguing the proposals lack solid evidence. The petition, sponsored by Conservative MP Dean Allison, is open until April the 9th. And as of February 11th, they had more than 800 signatures. These petitions are used to bring attention to an issue of public interest or concern and to request that the House of Commons, the Government of Canada, a Minister of the Crown, or a member of the House of Commons take some action. The petition calls upon the House of Commons to remove the license of cannabis producers that allow the escape of cannabis odors. Raise the minimum age of possession of cannabis to 25. Not allow the production of cannabis in the edible form. And act on the recommendations of the review of the Cannabis Act by setting and monitoring targets for reducing youth and young adult cannabis use and reinstating health warning messages that pertain to serious cannabis-related mental health risks, including schizophrenia and psychosis. In a letter addressed to the House of Commons on February the 11th, General Cavan, the executive director at Normal Canada, says that while the petition raises important issues. She believes several of the conclusions and policy requests presented do not follow from the evidence cited and, in certain cases, risk undermining the public health objectives they purport to advance. She says, Canada's cannabis framework is not without areas for improvement. However, the evidence supports continued regulation, enforcement against illicit markets, robust public education, safe packaging and storage standards, and targeted harm reduction strategies. Rolling back regulation or adopting prohibitionist measures would predictably worsen public health outcomes. Now, Normal Canada stands ready to prevent or to support Parliament and relevant committees with data, research, summaries, and stakeholder input to strengthen evidence-based cannabis policy in Canada. She goes on to tell StratCan that she has also sent the letters to the Minister of Health, the Standing Committee on Health Studies, and Allison, the MP, sponsoring the petition. Now, as far as meeting each of those things, she says that, or Normal says that as far as cannabis odor and public health, the petition references reports of discomfort associated with cannabis odor exposure. Odor nuisance is a quality of life and environmental management issue, not a demonstrated public health harm. Canada already regulates odor through municipal nuance bylaws, provincial environmental standards, and Health Canada licensing requirements for odor mitigation at production facilities, revoking federal licenses solely on the basis of odor complaints would be disproportionate, legally tenuous, and inconsistent with established regulatory approaches. The appropriate response is consistent enforcement of existing standards, not punitive licensing actions. Now, as far as number 2, the brain development, the proposal to raise the legal age to 25, it says that it is accurate that brain development continues into the mid-20s. However, this fact is frequently misapplied to policy. Public health framework balance risks with realism and harm reduction. Raising the legal age of cannabis possession to 25 would predictably displace young adults into the illicit market, reduce access to regulated and tested products, and weaken opportunities for evidence-based education and harm reduction. There is no credible evidence that higher age threshold reduce overall use. There is strong evidence that regulated market reduce harms relative to prohibition. Now, number 3, as far as the youth use statistics and internal comparisons, Canada had comparatively high youth use rates prior to legalization. Post-legalization data did not support the claim that regulation has driven a substantial increase in youth use. In several cohorts, youth use has remained stable or declined, while adult consumers had transitioned from illegal to legal channels. Regulation provides tools for adult verification, product standards, and public education that were unavailable under prohibition. Number 4, pediatric exposures and edibles. Unintentional ingestion by children is a serious concern that warrants continued attention. However, banning edibles would not eliminate these products. It would shift them to unregulated channels with higher potency and poorer labeling and no child-resistant packaging. Canada's legal framework already mandates strict dosing limits, plain packaging, and child-resistant containers. The evidence supports enhanced education on safe storage and continued enforcement of packaging standards, not prohibition. And the last one, emergency department presentations and mental health. Number 5, the relationship between cannabis and mental health is complex. Cannabis does not cause schizophrenia. It may exacerbate symptoms among individuals with pre-existing vulnerabilities with risk influenced by age of initiation, dose, and individual factors. Effective public health responses emphasize targeted risk communication, screening, and lower risk use, guidance. And they say that reinstating fear-based warning labels without nuanced risks eroding public trust and has not been shown to change behavior in a durable way. And there's number 6. On the petition specific request, revoking producer licenses for odor escape, disappropriate and inconsistent with established regulatory practice, raising the minimum legal age to 25 likely to expand the illicit market and increase the risks. And they say prohibiting edibles would undermine child safety by pushing products into unregulated channels. So there you go, Cindy. This is Normal's response to that MP's petition about what they want to do, the changes, the cannabis.
Oh my goodness, it's so good that I'm off screen when you're reading this stuff, because the stuff that comes out of my mouth while you're reading, you wouldn't want on air. Straight up. There was a second petition here at the bottom that was brought out by Jennifer Collette, who is the co-founder of the Canadian Medical Cannabis Partners. And she started this on October 29th of 2025. And it's sponsored by the NDP MP and current party leader, Don Davis, who is Vancouver. And she's calling on the federal government to do, 4 different things. Establish a federal, provincial, territorial ministers' table on cannabis, support it by intergovernmental secretariat and standing working groups. She wants to develop a pan-Canadian cannabis framework to set national baseline standards, harmonize data collection, and then create a public reporting dashboard. I don't see that as a bad thing. She would also like to provide targeted transfers and cost sharing to provinces and Indigenous governments adopting harmonized standards. And she also wants to monitor, evaluate, and publicly report national outcomes annually. She started this back in October, and it is going strong until February 26 is when that one is done. And as far as the rest of it goes, the one that sticks in my head, the comment that I had that sticks in my head is about the cannabis odor. And straight up about the odor, if we're going to get mad at different companies for their smell, let's go to coal burning. Let's go to pig farming. Let's go to cow farming. Let's go to bread making. Have you ever gone by a bread making facility when they're making bread? Yeast is
oil refineries in New Brunswick. I drove by there, and it stunk.
Yeah, it's terrible.
There's
if we're going to go by smell, then those are the things that we should be worried about too, right? I think that if we're going to be worried about smell, it should be smells that can physically harm us, like cigarette smoke, or all of this pollution going into the air from the oil refining companies or things like that. But to smell cannabis and to say, I don't like it, well, we've just listed off a bunch that, are absolutely terrible. And so if we're going to go by that, then we should go after everybody. It should be a fair thing. And I'm sorry, but Owen Smith won us the right to have edibles so they can bugger off.
Exactly.
Supreme Court of Canada said yes.
And in 2013, according to the report that was put out by UNICEF, Canada led the developed world in minors consuming cannabis. So the numbers are down since they legalized. So.
One of the things that I did when I was in university, I did some research, and you said miners, so this is what triggered it. Coal miners used to come up from their time down under, working and whatnot, and they would work in the hemp fields, taking everything down, and they would be paid in hemp or flour. They wouldn't, they didn't get paid, but smoking this, they were able to start coughing up the coal and the tar and healing their lungs from their work, because way back then they didn't have it, right? It also made a better product for clothing back then, and we all have seen the pictures of the medicine bottles from way back then. And
you should have. Yeah, and just so you know, got a comment.
Oh my goodness! If you eat hash, that's going to happen. I'm just telling you.
He's going to ban his gas.
I went to a hockey game in Halifax one night, and I ran into somebody. I was in a lot of pain. I forgot edible, so he gave me a little ball of hash, and he said, "Eat this. It'll work just like an edible. It'll be great. You'll never go back to edibles." Yeah. So I ate the hash, and he's right. When it hit, I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just going to use this as edibles. And then I passed gas in the middle of the afternoon at a hockey game full of kids. I watched the security running around looking for the pot smoker, and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, oh no.
All right. I think it's time for us to move on.
Oh yeah. Okay. Enough of these silly stories. On to our next story. It is coming to us from the business of cannabis. U.S. hemp industry in limbo as FDA deadline for cannabinoid definitions arrives. We've reported on this as it's been ongoing. The U.S. hemp industry is once again caught in regulatory uncertainty. According to Business of Cannabis, a long-awaited deadline has arrived for the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to clarify how it defines and regulates cannabinoids like CBD, Delta-8, and other hemp-derived compounds, and the lack of clear guidance is leaving businesses in limbo. Since 2018, Farm Bill legalized hemp. Companies have raced to develop cannabinoid products for wellness, food, beverages, and supplements. But the FDA never created a clear regulatory framework for how these products should be sold. As a result, the industry has operated in a gray zone. We're used to that up here in Canada. Legal in theory, but constantly vulnerable to the enforcement and actions and shifting interpretations. Now, with pressure mounting from Congress and industry groups, the FDA is expected to finally outline what is allowed, what isn't, and how safety standards could apply. The problem? Many businesses fear the agency could take a restrictive stance that wipes out entire segments of the market, especially CBD ingestibles. Back to edibles here. The article explains that without clear federal rules, states are filling the gap with their own laws, creating a confusing patchwork of regulations. For hemp producers and retailers, this uncertainty makes long-term planning almost impossible. In short, the future of the U.S. hemp industry hinges on what the FDA does next, and that's kind of scary, and whether it supports innovation or locks it down. I don't know about you, Al, but I think just friggin' legalize it already, and then they wouldn't have to do all this stuff.
And the thing, too, is when's that going to be done? It says the deadline has arrived. Next Thursday, we should be able to report that the deadline has come and gone, and there's probably nothing even established yet, just like the other stuff that we're told, that there's a executive order out there that hasn't done anything. There's the head of the Terrence Cole. I think he's the DEA end of things. He said it was priority. It's been a year. Nothing. So I don't know how long it's going to take, but I haven't got my hopes up that this is going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, it's from the Canadian point of view. I mean, I would hate to be down in the United States, but from the Canadian point of view, like, this is really annoying to sit here and watch. Like, their policies affect our banking. And so therefore anybody that's involved, with the exception of even the Nova Scotia liquor store, like the legal stuff, they find it hard to do banking, and they have to route it in different ways. And it's just really quite annoying. I mean, just legalize it already. You're not making money by doing all of this, I don't think. I mean, if you're paying people for to put together policies and whatnot, you're going to have to pay them anyway. So
yeah, I know stores, people, just small business stores that have problems dealing with the banks because of the U.S. position on cannabis. Like these are, neighboring, like down the road from me type stores. So yeah.
Well, I do casual work, like just when they need me, if somebody's sick or away, for a head shop here in Nova Scotia. I'm actually heading there this afternoon. But even a head shop who just sells the paraphernalia, I mean, like just papers and stuff, and incense and candles, she has issues because of what she sells. She got kicked out of 2 different banks over the last few years and ended up, in the BMO because they were open to what she was doing.
Yeah.
But that's the only bank that was willing to take the risk, knowing that she was selling the paraphernalia.
Yeah, that's what I understand. BMO is one of the places that are friendly towards it. So
yeah.
All right. Time for us to move on to the next story. And this one is coming to us from Leafly. The headline there says, legalizing cannabis reduces opioid use by people who inject drugs. A new study has found that states which legalized cannabis for both medical and recreational use experienced a 9 to 11% reduction in daily opioid use among people who inject drugs, according to the new study published in the journal Drug and Alcohol Dependence. Researchers from the Boston University School of Public Health analyzed data from 28,000 people who inject drugs across 13 U.S. states between 2012 and 2022. They found that cannabis access may enable people to substitute the unstable and toxic opioid supply with comparatively safer cannabis. They say the magnitude of decrease in opioid use that we observed among the population that has experienced opioid use and likely to experience unpleasant withdrawal symptoms after reducing the use is very profound and important, according to the lead author, Dr. Danielle Haley. Now, researchers found that the states transitioning from medical-only cannabis laws to allowing both medical and adult recreational use saw significant reductions in daily opioid misuse. The decline was particularly pronounced when examining injected opioids specifically, where the probability dropped between 2 and 11% depending on the model used. Previous research has found that people who use opioids often report turning to cannabis to manage the withdrawals, reduce cravings, support recovery efforts. Now, among the PWIDs, more frequent cannabis use has been associated with injecting opioids less often and improved retention in opioid treatment programs, both of which reduce opioid or overdose risks. Now, according to Stephen Murray, he says that what this study shows is the potential impact of decriminalization paired with the access to regulated market. Now, he's a clinical assistant professor of community health services and an overdose survivor, and says that when legal barriers are removed and people have safer alternatives available, we see meaningful reductions in daily opioid use even among people with long histories of injection drug use. Cindy, more evidence that cannabis substitution programs make a difference.
Absolutely. These particular stories always hit me in the heart, simply because I used cannabis to get clean. I didn't do it on purpose. It was a big fluke, to be honest. I had gone from cocaine to pharmaceuticals, and I was on heavy pharmaceuticals, heavy addictive pharmaceuticals, on 9 of them actually. And one day somebody told me to, listen, for your pain, add cannabis, oil to your regimen. And 3 days after starting the cannabis oil, I started to give up the pharmaceuticals. And I didn't realize what I was doing. I didn't even then didn't realize the level of addiction I was in. I thought that I was free from addiction because I got rid of cocaine, but then I still had alcohol and all of these pharmaceuticals. And cannabis came along and said, no, it's time for you to be sober now. Yeah. And, watching our friends like Neil Magnuson and the whole group right across this country, working hard to bring cannabis to those people who are affected with addiction. I think it's just such a beautiful thing. And I love seeing studies and more information coming out about how it works.
I believe I saw a poster going around 9 years now since Neil started.
Yeah, the other day it was their 9-year anniversary, and the amount of people that he has helped in those 9 years, even though, God rest him, he's not with us anymore, his legacy is still helping people. Correct. And it will probably go on forever. Yeah. So the people that he has helped it's countless, and people are being added to it every day. And it's we have a cannabis substitution project here in Nova Scotia too, and that is run by people who have had their fights with addiction, and they're out there on the streets helping others. And I think it's a beautiful thing to see.
They're looking for help when the governments are looking for help and all that stuff. It's right there. They can help. I'm not saying
we aren't that far.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a solution, but it can help.
Yep. And for some of us, it is a solution.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it was the solution to getting sober. And then I had other earth medicines that came along and helped me do the healing that I needed to stay sober. And, these things can, for most people, can do worlds of wonders.
Yeah, exactly. All right, on to the next story before we go to break.
Yeah, last story before we go to break is coming to you from Ganjapreneur. Cannabis use associated with better cognitive function in adults aged 40 to 77. A surprising new study is challenging stereotypes about cannabis and the aging brain. According to Ganjapreneur, researchers found that adults aged 40 to 77 who used cannabis showed equal and in some cases better cognitive performance than non-users. The study measured memory, attention, processing speed, and executive function. After controlling for education, income, and health status, cannabis users did not show cognitive decline. Many critics have long, long predicted. In fact, some users perform slightly better on certain tasks. Researchers say the findings suggest that moderate cannabis use in adulthood does not automatically harm brain function and may even be associated with protective factors like stress reduction or improved sleep. This doesn't mean cannabis is a brain booster, so they might think, but it does undermine the idea that all cannabis use leads to cognitive damage, especially in older adults. As legalization continues, studies like this are helping replace outdated assumptions with real data about how cannabis actually affects the brain over time. Al, I can think of other studies that we have read that have talked about ingesting cannabis and how that helps to protect the myelin sheath, therefore staving off Alzheimer's and dementia.
Yes, yeah. And I see that study was done looking at 26,000 people. So it wasn't just a small study of 10 or 15 or 20 people. It was, large.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's good news. Good news for sure. So, and, it points out, it shows the opposite to what has been saying since the 70s.
Since 1923, actually.
Yeah, exactly. All right, what do you say? Time for us to take a break?
It is definitely that time.
Okay, we'll be back in about 3 minutes, and in the meantime, you're going to hear from those who make our voices louder.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420. Rerolled Saturdays. Check it out. Nothing but non-stop cannabis and psychedelic programming. Find it at 420pace.ca.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Are you looking to get your medical cannabis grow license? Limestone City Hydroponics can help patients through the process of obtaining their license to grow medical cannabis. What's that? You don't have a doctor. If you meet the medical criteria, Limestone City Hydroponics has a nurse practitioner who can assess and provide medical cannabis prescriptions. What are you waiting for? Contact Limestone City Hydroponics at limestonecityhydroponics.ca or call them at 613-548-0420.
Pace Radio is the People Advocating Cannabis Education Radio Network.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
All right, welcome back to Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News. Somebody posted a question. What are we watching here? Well, there you go. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about cannabis. We're talking about psychedelics and let you know what's going on in the news. Both of them. All right. We shall get started. Here we go. I'm up.
You're up.
First story back is from StratCan. Headline says, New Health Canada cannabis guidance shows absurd education gap in healthcare, says pharmacists. The Cannabis Consultation Service in Ontario says new federal guidance on cannabis for medical purposes highlights a growing gap in Canadian healthcare when it comes to information about consistent clinical education dosing support or medication interaction screening. Now, At-Eze Chahal, co-founder of At-Eze, a pharmacist-led cannabis consultation service that provides guidance for patients seeking cannabis as part of their wellness plan, says Health Canada's recent published information on the use of cannabis for medical purposes highlights how medical cannabis patients in Canada are often left on their own when it comes to making decisions about their cannabis use. The document also notes that legal cannabis products produced and sold in Canada have not been authorized to treat specific diseases or symptoms and have not been reviewed to determine whether they are safe or effective for these purposes. It says, according to Chahal Farm, it says that this is upside down healthcare. Health Canada has done the work to put clear guidance in front of Canadians, but it's absurd that patients are still forced to become their own medical educationers. We've created a reality where patients are forced to rely on bud tenders for psychoclinical advice with product recommendations for sleep, pain, anxiety, or cancer-related symptoms based on anecdotes like, this worked for someone I know. That's not informed care. It's a symptom of a system that has failed to keep up. Now, in response to Health Canada's guidance, At-Eze is calling for 4 immediate actions to close the cannabis education gap in Canadian healthcare. Number 1, integrate medical cannabis education into core training for physicians, pharmacists, nurses, and allied healthcare providers with standardized learning outcomes focused on dosing, contradictions as far as other medications, impairment, and the drug interactions. Bingo, right there. Yes. Now, number 2, establish clinical cannabis counseling as a patient safety standard, ensuring Canadians can access evidence-based guidance that is consistent, medically responsible, and not dependent on retail environments. Modernize continuing education for number 3. those requirements through professional bodies so that clinicians can confidently counsel patients and screens for risk factors as cannabis use becomes more common in symptom management. And number 4, treat cannabis like other pharmacology active therapies in routine care, including normalizing disclosure, documenting use, and supporting follow-up monitoring instead of leaving patients to trial and error. Now, Cindy, there you go. There's been, for years, we've been saying doctors are not being trained on cannabis.
Nope.
And the doctors are now, this company here that is run by pharmacists are saying the same thing.
Yep.
And
they have no idea.
Yeah. And
unless they're users themselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that I've done an interview with Dr. Daniel Baer from Humber College in Toronto. And he's been working with pharmacists in order to start getting some of that process going. There's you and me that don't go directly to the pharmacist, but I found especially in the heavy days of the MMAR, dealing directly with patients and helping them get their licenses and all that stuff. A lot of people didn't have any of that knowledge and education, and they wanted that stuff.
Yep.
And it was so frustrating. But they wanted to go to the doctors.
Yeah. I have an amazing therapist who 12 years ago signed my prescription for the first time. And she had no idea about cannabis, straight up. And it took me, I shouldn't say 12 years ago. It was probably about 11 years ago, because it took me a while to educate her and convince her that this helps me. Now, I don't think she has a patient that isn't using cannabis in some form. And she's desperately trying to find a way to inform them about, microdosing. And, so it's, but she doesn't have the education on any of this. And there are now extracurricular educations out of a couple of the universities here in Canada that teach about cannabis, but that's extracurricular. It's not in the doctor's realm. They have to make the decision that they want to be knowledgeable about this and go and pay for this and go take the courses, et cetera, which some of them have. But not enough of them. And this story talks about how, we have to rely on bud tenders. Here in Canada, it's illegal for them to give any medical advice whatsoever in the legal stores. What's best for sleep? I don't know.
A friend tells me, or from my experience, and, anecdotal evidence, and that was, things that we said, over the years as advocates, doing home shows and stuff like that.
Yep.
And people want
real knowledge. And my only hope is with this, I haven't looked into these extracurricular courses, but my hope is with this is that they actually teach the truth.
Yeah, well, one of the biggest problems with Health Canada, when I was going through all that, Health Canada doesn't recognize cannabis as a medicine. So those are demands on Health Canada on something that they don't even believe in.
Yep. Which is so I'm glad these universities have offered the private extracurricular stuff. But it is, it is that time. This would be a good petition to have. I think this is a petition that would actually mean something and go somewhere to get Health Canada on board about, medical cannabis and get them teaching it to the people that write the prescriptions.
Yeah. Well, just so you know, it's not a petition, but it's a survey I just posted, came from Carleton University. It's posted on the People Advocating Cannabis Education group. A survey there to deal with cannabis and stigma and so on and so forth. Yep. If anybody's interested in doing that. But we should get moving on to the next story.
We should. Okay, coming to us once again from Leafy. Babies exposed to cannabis during pregnancy show no difference in development. A new study is challenging long-standing assumptions about cannabis use during pregnancy. According to Leafy, researchers found no significant differences in early childhood development between babies who were exposed to cannabis in utero and for those who weren't. The study followed children over time and measured outcomes like motor skills, communication, emotional development, and behavior. After adjusting for factors such as income, education, and other substance use, researchers found no meaningful developmental gaps linked specifically to prenatal cannabis exposure. That doesn't mean cannabis is being recommended during a pregnancy, but it does suggest that earlier fears may have been overstated or based on incomplete data. Historically, cannabis research has struggled to separate its effects from confounding factors like tobacco use, stress, and access to healthcare. This article notes that as legalization spreads, more women are being honest with their healthcare providers about cannabis use. The openness is allowing scientists to gather better data and replace assumptions with true evidence. For policymakers and doctors, the message is clear. Guidance should be rooted in science, not stigma. And for expecting parents, it highlights the importance of nuanced, non-judgmental healthcare conversations. Al, I have known many mamas-to-be who have used cannabis to help with their nausea and their comfort during pregnancy. I've also read the studies that as women, and I've used this line many times in teaching people about cannabis, women specifically. Did you breastfeed your children? When I get a yes, makes you a drug dealer. We produce cannabinoids in our breast milk to feed our babies. Babies go through a lot of pain when they're teething and they're growing in the first few months. It's a lot of growing, and the teething is pure painful. And God, the Creator, has given us the ability to help them with that.
And helps them learn how to eat. Gives them the munchies.
Absolutely.
As Dr. Bob used to say. So I see the report, 7,200 babies that they did in this. And they went through people that weren't just cannabis users. There were some that were cannabis and other substance users, uses as well, that were involved in this study. And the way that they were measuring the cannabis in the babies was through their poop.
Through their poop.
Through their poop.
Well, isn't that interesting? What a way to test for cannabis.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's what it said. So, all righty. On to our next story. Here we go. This one is coming to me from the Harvard Gazette. Headline says, Center for the Study of World Religions brings psychedelic chaplaincy to the forefront. A global resurgence of scientific, medical, and public interest in the therapeutic and transformative potential of psychedelic drugs or medicines, plants, and fungi is raising questions about the availability of a spiritual responsive care, including the emerging field of psychedelic chaplaincy in clinical and community settings where psychedelics are used. Psychedelic journeys in both clinical and non-clinical settings often lead participants to profound spiritual, religious, and external experiences. This raises a crucial question. What kinds of responsive care and support are needed to protect patients and enhance these experiences? Now, in the United States and around the world, a growing number of researchers are investigating the therapeutic potential for psychedelic substances to treat post-traumatic stress and depression, addiction, and other mental health conditions. This psychedelic renaissance is also marked by a surge in psychedelic-based communities, churches, and underground practitioners who use these substances in religious ceremonies and for personal healing and growth. Now, Jeffrey Brough, program lead of psychedelics and spirituality at the Center for the Study of World Religions, said that psychedelic chaplaincy is necessary in developing field that holds promise for addressing the need for spiritual attuned care. He says that patients are having these experiences, and if there is no awareness and specific training on the part of the clinicians or others who are supporting them, then the patient outcomes can be harmed. He says, now in 2024, just so you know, the CSWR developed a multi-year plan to establish the intellectual and pedagogical foundations of psychedelic chaplaincy after a visit to the interventional psychiatry clinic at Brigham and Women's Faulkner Hospital in Boston, where Harvard Divinity School students interested in psychedelic chaplaincy served internship. Now, only about half of the patients received ketamine treatment connected with the HDS chaplaincy interns before or after treatment, leaving others to process their experiences on their own. The study, conducted by leading experts, Roman Pelbaleski of the Emory Spiritual Health, Woodruff Health Sciences Center, and the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences, this is all based on interviews with representatives from 13 established and emerging psychedelic facilities training programs. Now, the results were published in the white paper titled Psychedelic Assisted Therapy Training in the U.S., a Landscape Analysis. Now, in response to the study, Bro and Paul Gillis Smith, who co-leads of the Psychedelic and Spirituality program at the CSWR, organized 2 spiritual care intensive workshops. The first, held in September, focused on therapists and medical professionals involved in psychedelic research and clinical treatments in medical settings. The second, held in December, centered on the therapists, chaplains, and others interested in providing spiritual care in both religions and recreational contexts. Participants from across the United States and as far away as the Netherlands attended the workshops to explore spiritual responsive centers in community-based settings, including psychedelic churches and groups. Topics including the role of spiritual care in communal and plant medicine healing environments, new religious movements forming around psychedelic sacraments, navigating law and practice in psychedelic or spiritual communities, and navigating spiritual differences in psychedelics experiences. Now, Laura Talk, she's assistant dean for ministry studies and field education at HDS, says that the field of psychedelic chaplaincy remains in its infancy, and the HDS and the CSWR are at the forefront of the development. And in a quote, she says, I feel the field will continue to grow because the chaplains know the language of support and can help patients with their spiritual and external experiences. There you go, Cindy. Chaplains and psychedelics working together like that, it's not something that you see every day.
No, but as somebody who works in the psychedelic field, to me, it's a perfect marriage. Doing the work that I do, and being involved in the community, you hear stories and you see stories happen of people that come in who are atheists, with belief that, when we die, it's done. That's it. It just stops, and they leave with beliefs and a knowledge in the ever after. And that's hard on a person, and the right person to help them process that information to me would be, a minister, a chaplain, somebody who both understands the psychedelic world and the spiritual world. That came in handy for myself, along my walk. So, and it's not just people that are coming in being an atheist. Everybody comes in and, gets some sort of awakening that way. It's hard not to when you are joined with a consciousness, and having that guidance there by somebody who's knowledgeable about it, I think is extremely important. It's a great form of integration.
Because it sounded to me, it wasn't just You know, like I know they have spiritual churches here and there. I've talked to some people in the past, but I look at it as beyond that. These are chaplains that are beyond just those spiritual churches, regular churches. Those ministers, so on and so forth, learning about psychedelics.
Yeah. It becomes part of their sacrament.
Yeah.
And part of their offerings. And, a lot of the times they'll have gatherings that are focused around having facilitators in and people partaking in the sacrament. And so they, it's a full realm, but I think it's something that goes hand in hand. Just to let people know, spirituality isn't necessarily religion. It's something a little different. And so practitioners and ministers or clergy on this side are a little different than what you would see in a church.
Yeah. All righty. We got one more story to cover.
Yes.
Here it goes.
Here we go. Coming to us from the Inside Hook, new research explores how psychedelics like ayahuasca may help treat post-traumatic stress injuries. A growing body of research is examining whether psychedelics, including ayahuasca, could help people living with post-traumatic stress injuries. According to Inside Hook, new studies suggest that psychedelic experiences may allow patients to revisit traumatic memories in a way that feels safer, more compassionate, and less overwhelming. PTSI, post-traumatic stress injuries, are often marked by emotional numbness, fear responses, and rigid thought patterns. Psychedelics appear to temporarily loosen these mental structures, allowing people to process trauma from a different psychological angle. In some studies, participants reported reduced symptoms, improved emotional regulation, and a stronger sense of meaning in life. They actually wake up in the morning glad. Ayahuasca, in particular, is a traditional Amazonian brew, is drawing interest because of its intense introspective effects. Researchers caution that it's not a casual treatment, no way, and that proper preparation, integration, and medical screening are essential to make sure you find a reputable facilitator. The article emphasizes that while results are promising, psychedelic therapy is not a magic cure. It's not a magic bullet, but it may offer something that many people struggling with post-traumatic stress injuries haven't had before: a way to access emotional healing when other treatments have completely and utterly failed them. As research expands, psychedelics are moving from the margins of psychology into serious clinical discussion. And I don't know about you, Al, but I, for one, am super excited to watch this conversation happen and evolve.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because, we've so many reports that we talk about, connecting brain neurons and connecting different pathways that have been damaged and so on and so forth. That, yeah.
I have so much anecdotal experience with, many ayahuasca, not in particular. I went the route of iboga. But, even if we're going back to microdosing with psilocybin, just using that psychedelic, I have watched people go from being seriously injured by a stroke and being told there's nothing that can be done for them to microdosing and getting some of their functions back because the neurons start firing and new pathways are formed, and speech is possible and moving of the other arm is possible. And so it is most definitely something that we should be watching, like the psychedelics, and educating as much as we can our psychiatrists and psychologists specifically, but doctors in general.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's good for them to learn. Like, not only do we started this show talking about how doctors need more education when it comes to cannabis, and we're going to end the show talking about doctors need more education on psychedelics.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Anything else offhand?
I don't think so. Monday's a holiday. Monday's the holiday.
That's right.
So
Monday's
we'll see you next Thursday.
We'll see you next Thursday. Exactly. All right. That's it for today. Thanks go out to everybody for tuning into the broadcast and to our sponsors, Limestone City, Hydroponics.ca, the Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, as well as At-Eze.ca. And as we said, we will see you next Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern. Keep an eye on the Psychedelics and Cannabis Education News Facebook page to get caught up on the news while we're away. But other than that, we will see you next Thursday. And don't forget, as I always say, to educate, medicate, and do not incarcerate. Doesn't make sense to me.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420. We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.